Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield here on the Rural Radio Network. You hear the noise behind me. We are at the Nebraska Cattlemen's Classic. And right now they are in the process of selling some bulls. They'll be selling heifers yet this week. But a great showcase of cattle, and what a great opportunity to talk to Brad Kooima, as you see him on the screen. Donning the cowboy hat today there, Brad. Let's look at what's going on in his markets. There's a lot of different influences, but I want to start out with this cash. Are you happy with where the cash price is at this point?
I sure am. I thought, it was worthwhile to, pull out the cowboy hat. I haven't traded cattle at 143. I'd have to look it up exactly, but I would say probably early half of 2015. It's been a while. And the cattle make a little bit of money here too. We've had just an outstanding winter here for performance. And I think everyone across the north is experiencing the same thing, where the cattle have done really well and they've grown better than we expected. Some of that, I think you can, translate into seeing what the average weights are. Hey, it's nice for your cattleman to have nice weather and nice prices, right? Everything's working just a little bit. I thought the theme of the week so far, though, like you said, was the stronger cash. 142 in the south, 143 up here.
So are you worried, though, when you talk about those weights right now, because the weather has been so nice? We haven't had a lot of super cold days out there.
Or any moisture or any mud. Mud is about the hardest thing there is on gain, in my opinion. It's weird. It's like Kansas, even up here in northwest Iowa. There's no snow at all. So I'm concerned. I guess I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't think it was important. The average weights, which are 13 days old, which I've talked about, is annoying. We've tried to get some policy change there to get that quicker. But we're at 899 steer and heifer carcass versus 900 a week ago and 892 a year ago. It's more tonnage. It's more stuff that has to move. Now, I don't think it's a deal breaker, and it's no reason to run out, and panic on anything. But, let's be realistic. That also would tell you why the choice select spread probably is as narrow as it is, Susan. At $3, we must be putting a lot of choice into the mix, right? I mean, remember when that choice select spread was $30 for $35 for a while? So there's a few things that I think need to give you a little bit of a little cautionary pause. I don't think that there's enough cattle to really wreck the market. Don't get me wrong. But we're at a nice price. Let's keep moving. Let's stay current. Let's stay at this price longer, right?
So having said that, are we going to see some adjustments going on in the basis?
That's what I'm kind of thinking. And I suppose everybody goes, oh, shucks, is Brad bearish? Not really, but I think that we're going to maybe see an adjustment in the basis. I really don't think the cash market, I shouldn't say can't break, because anything can break. As we know, every night you go home, something bad can happen, it seems like, anymore. But I really expect to see this cash market stay firm. And I wonder if maybe we don't see a more seasonal or more normal trend toward what the basis often does now. And that is where futures catch up, or cash rather catches up to where the futures are. I know that there's a big fund roll that has to come out of the April cattle. I'm hearing a little bit of chatter from some of the hedgers, especially out of the south, that, oh gosh, we can't sell cattle because we're hedged April and the basis is too wide. That might lead to a chance maybe that you might get a holding action rally, I guess I call it. I'm not crazy about a holding action rally, because that, let's stay current. I'd rather see that. So I could see maybe a little bit of movement, or maybe we narrow up the difference between April and cash. But I'm really nitpicking here. I think, bigger worry, recession, interest rates, global geopolitical global events. There's plenty of stuff out there, but the guts of the cattle market feel pretty nice to me.
You were talking before we started today's cattle call about this black hole of demand this time of year. Are we seeing it, or are we seeing them even squeeze tighter on their pocketbooks, knowing, or maybe the unknown, of what the future is going to bring?
Well, that's something that we're really trying to dial in on, Susan. Normally you are in a period of time here where this is kind of the abyss for demand. Rule of thumb is that a week or so ahead of the Super Bowl, until you get, say, a couple of weeks or maybe a month ahead of Mother's Day, you're in that weather's still crummy. It's not warm enough to grill. There's no real holiday deal. You're going into Lent pretty soon. All the stuff that usually contributes is to a little more of a draggy time for the red meat deal. But it's we do it every year. I mean, it's not like this is the first time this has ever happened, but I would expect that this is going to give you a little more of that, that forced trade in the cash or in the beef anyway. But, I also have to always say, of course, I mean, these packers got giant margins. Let's get this meat price down a little bit so it's more competitive again by the time we get to warmer weather, which isn't so far away. It doesn't feel like the way it is around here lately anyway. But so I'm not, it's a short-term problem that I think will get better. But yes, in the short term, I do think the thing's a little bit slower for a minute.
So looking at the snow that's moving through, obviously we're seeing some areas that are getting inundated with snow, even some cattle country areas. Does this latest system that's moving through to the south, is that going to cause for any slowdowns? And could it affect the way we see bids into next week?
I asked around yesterday and this morning with the weather guys down there, and me and the guy from Iowa, I always root for a snowstorm in Kansas. Just kidding, I do. But not that I'd wish any bad luck on anybody. The feeling that I'm getting from the guys, though, that yes, there's some areas that it's going to be kind of messy, but I tell you what, when you get to the middle of February, those guys in Texas and Kansas are starting to think about planting corn. I mean, it's close to spring. So the sense I get is I'm afraid I don't really get the vibe that they think it's a real market factor, other than maybe in the very short term here and now where it's supportive to the fed cattle a little bit. So I don't think it'll be a big deal unless it gets even worse. We're finally supposed to get a little bit of moisture next week here for the first time in a long time. So yeah, weather is still a factor. I don't think it's a big deal right now, though, Susan.
Let's get through this dryness, because we know that there's been a lot of talk of heifers moving to market because there's just no feed as this drought continues to spread across the upper Midwest.
If you only watched one thing, it would be, is it going to rain enough to get these pastures started in the spring? And it usually does, right? So let's hope so. Because that, if we get enough moisture to get this grass started where the cow calf guy is going to decide, yes, I'm going to hold these heifers back. Of course, that's going to start us on a cycle that we're all anxious to see start. But it's got to rain first. Let's see if that develops this spring.
All right. Sounds good, Brad. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
Of course.
That's been Brad Kooima joining us for this week's Cattle Call. And as always, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, and they're not suitable for all investors. From the Nebraska Cattlemen's Classic, taking place at the Buffalo County Fairgrounds in Kearney,